The next thing I want to cover with you is one of the most important lessons my rich dad gave me, and it was called the Cash Flow Quadrant. And what my rich dad explained to me is that there's 4 people in business. One are E's, employees. S stands for small business, self-employed, or specialist. B stands for big business, and I stands for investor. And the thing of note here is that most people who go to school are programmed for the E and the S side. For example, it was my poor dad who always said to me, son, go to school so you can get a nice, safe, secure job. And so my poor dad wanted me to be an employee. And since the time I was a kid, get a safe, secure job, steady paycheck, and benefits. Okay? I didn't want to be an employee. And I said, Mom and Dad, I want to be a rich man. And I fight with my dad. So my mother finally said, son, if you want to be rich, my mother was a registered nurse. And she said, if you want to be rich, the richest people I know are doctors. So my mom wanted me to come over here, be a specialist or a small business person. I said, there's only one problem with that, Mom. Doctors are really smart. And she says, you got a good point there. I'm not going to be a doctor. So I went to school. I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I can drive ships and I can fly planes. I flew for the Marine Corps. But I've never used any of that education because I wanted to become a business owner. So it was my rich dad who basically said to me, become a business owner and learn to be a professional investor. So one of the big differences here between these people is that it's called taxes. See, in 1943, in the U.S., the federal government passed a law that said employees had to pay tax before they got paid. So when you get your paycheck from your employer, you open it up, and voila, the government's always taken a sizable chunk of it. And the harder you work and the more money you make, the more money they take from you. So that's why it's not that good to be an employee, because you can never get ahead, because the more you work, more money you make, the greater they pay in taxes. Now the doctors, the lawyers, and attorneys, accountants were all laughing, saying, "Oh, these guys, they're getting paying a lot of taxes." So naturally, the federal government changed the laws again. So in 1986 in the U.S., a thing called the '86 Tax Reform Act. And it basically took a lot of the benefits away from people who are self-employed, small business, doctors, and lawyers. So today in America, unfortunately, these guys pay the highest percentage in taxes. It is tragic. And a lot of people think they're investors, but what they're really doing is they're just giving their money to people like mutual funds, companies, and all that. So they're investing, but they're not really investors. See, the big tax breaks are on this side. The laws are pretty tight here, but this area is very, very gray. So by being a business owner on the right-hand side of the quadrant, you can make a lot more money and pay a smaller percentage of taxes legally. And the key word is legally. In the investor quadrant, it is possible to make millions of dollars and pay 0% taxes legally. But you've got to know the difference. So one of the beauties of business for the 21st century is it allows people to make the transition from the E and the S side to the B side especially. And so you can become a big business owner. And the difference between an S and a B, small business and big business, is most of these guys can't quit working. Most small business owners, if they stop working for more than a month, the business collapses. They don't really have a business. Most of these people own a job. So the beauty of business for the 21st century, it allows these people to make the transition to the B side so that you don't have to keep working hard for money, and the money can actually come in passively. Then once you have your business up and running, then I always recommend you then begin investing with your excess cash, paying less and less in taxes. And that's the reason the rich are getting richer. Let's continue on with another lesson here. And so we were talking about your assets and liabilities, right? And when you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I said your house is not an asset, what did you think? It's a crucial question. And this is what financial education and financial literacy really is. Again, it starts with a financial statement. And I would say probably 95% of all college graduates don't know what a financial statement is. But I say to young people like you, there's 6 basic words to financial literacy and financial education. And the 6 words again are income, expense, asset liability. See, I don't really care about my FICO score. A FICO score just basically registers, are you trustworthy with borrowing money? But a bank will never say, I borrow in the hundreds of millions of dollars. A FICO score not going to get me there, okay? And so it's kind of a ruse. I mean, it's important, but not for me. So these are the four words: income, expense, asset, liability, and the last two words are the words cash flow. And that's why the game is called Cash Flow. And the secret to being rich is not a college education, but can you control cash flow? And this is what cash flowing looks like. So this here, you need this, income, expense, asset, liability. Again, this is, you get a job. And this was my poor dad, go to school, get a job, get your PhD. And so this here is cash flow. So the income comes in and it goes out this way. First line of expense is tax. So this is a poor person's cash flow pattern. It's not how much money you make. Most people, you know, I don't care if you have a PhD or no school at all, but they can't control the cash flowing out through their expenses. And so that's why people like Susie Orman say, cut up your credit cards, live below your means, because you're a spendaholic. So that's a poor person. This is a middle class person's cash flow pattern. And this is where the house comes in. First thing, you know, most kids do when they get pay raise and all that, they buy themselves a bigger house. Oh, my house is an asset. Now, who tells you that? Your real estate agent, of course.
Yeah.
Right? Because they want to give you this false sense of security while you're getting screwed.
Exactly.
You know, but when you look at what happens with a house, a personal residence, something I live in, the money comes in, it goes out, and this is middle class, but it also goes out through a mortgage payments. Oh, but I don't have a mortgage. You still have taxes. You still, you know, Hawaii just raised the property taxes on me, which is probably what I'm going to sell. I'm going to get out of Hawaii. But you have taxes and you have upkeep. So money's always flowing out. So that's why your house is not an asset, is because it's taking money from your pocket. So very simply said, assets put money in my pocket, liabilities take money from my pocket. And then this here is, so I'm not saying don't buy a house, but here is a house. And I started when I was 25, bought my first house, and it was an apartment, it was an investment property. I didn't live in it, I rented it out, and it put money in my pocket. So very simple, the definition of asset and liability is not the house or this, it's cash flow. Where is the cash flowing? So as a young person, and to all millennials or if you're old, financial intelligence is the ability to control cash flow. And that's what they don't teach you at school. They tell you to go to school, get a job. First thing is tax. You know, you'll pay, most of your money will go out through taxes in your lifetime. And then they tell you to buy a house and a car. A car is an asset. No, a car is a liability. You got insurance, gas, upkeep, and all this. Now, if you buy a taxi car, it could be an asset. It's cash flow. And that's very simply it. So this is a poor person. Money goes out. There's a lot. We just interviewed some National Football League players who make millions of dollars in their 20s. And most of them are broke in 2 years because they can't control cash flow. Intelligence, IQ, is can you control cash flow? Not your college degree. College degrees are important, but they're not going to teach you this. So the cash flow game trains you over and over and over and over again to get your money in here to get cash flow this way. So I started with this. Cost me $18,000. I paid for the credit card and I put $25 in my pocket. Okay? It's an infinite return because the cash flow paid for the mortgage, it paid the expenses, pays the operating costs, and I still made $25. Kim's first deal was the same. Hers wasn't $18,000. It was $50,000, $45,000. And they put $25 in her pocket. But Kim now owns 6,500 rental properties, and she pays no tax because the income comes from here. If you have a job, you pay tax, but income, the rich get richer because when you have asset income, taxes are less. You can get it down to zero if you want. But that's financial intelligence. But can you control cash flow? Okay, just focus on that. So when you're buying a new house, you gotta say, is this going to take money or put money? You buy an apartment house, is it going to take money or put money? That's it. That's it. It's cash flow. Six most important words for financial intelligence and IQ is income, expense, asset, liability, but it's really cash flow. Now, if I could bring up a more horrible subject, is do you think people can be assets or liabilities? Most young people, they fall in love, they get married, they have kids. Is a child an asset or liability? Now, I'm not saying don't have kids, but you got to think the kid is expensive, and they don't get cheaper. They get more expensive every year. You know, then they go to college, and then it gets even more expensive. So a human being, and that sounds horrible to all the socialists and communists out there, but the fact is, kids cost money. But as an old guy, I want you to think about this. As I get older, and as people get older, family members become liabilities. So I have a friend whose mother, thank God she had long-term, I don't know what they call it, but they just canceled it on her. She can go to a old age home, and I think the price is $18,000 a month. So that if, as a young person, as your parents get older, the question is, can I afford to spend $20,000 a month on my mom or my dad's long-term health care? No. So, and this is going to happen to my generation. Many people don't realize, but their brothers or sisters' kids and all this become liabilities to them. So as a person is fairly well off, and Kim and my friends are thinking about two-legged liabilities. So I know today that if my sisters become ill, I'm the one with the money, and it's my responsibility to pay for them. Same as my brothers and their kids. So these are things that people don't think about a lot of times, is what happens not only as they grow up, but what happens as they age. Statistics show the average person, like my generation, let's have $1 million, 80% of that $1 million will be gone the last 2 years of life, because medical expenses go through the roof. And today insurance companies are canceling, I forget the name of it, but my friend's mother, it was just canceled. So he doesn't have $18,000 a month. So he had to bring his mother into his house and, you know, create another room and all this. He said, well, I love her, which he does, but she's a big liability. And all he had was savings. So the savings are being depleted going out this way. Okay, so with your question about houses and people, but people are assets and liabilities. So this is the basic of financial intelligence, financial literacy, stuff like this. Another thing about people is you have a bad advisor, like a bad financial planner or a crook, or a business partner that's a crook, a wife that's a crook and all that. There can be human liabilities. I have two friends right now who just joined the $1 Million Club. Okay, they married beautiful women, got divorced, and the woman is now costing $1 million a year in alimony. So their beautiful wife and the child support, it's $1 million going. And she's only 40 years old, so she has a whole pile of boyfriends, but it's costing him $1 million a year for her boyfriends. I said, I want to be her boyfriend. Not really, you know. That makes sense to you? Financial IQ is, can you control cash flow? IQ means how big a problem can you solve? So if, like my friend whose mother is now costing him $18,000 a month, well, thank God he has about $100,000 in savings, but in 1 year it's gone.
Yeah.
That's not high IQ. But for myself, $18,000 a month, I can go make that much cash flow pretty easily.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're like in your 20s, you're something, well, how am I going to make, let's say, by the time you're probably $100,000 a month to take care of my parents? Because like it or not, it's cash flow and they become liabilities. And the problem is getting worse because the bond markets are not providing income. So many insurance companies have to renege on their promises to provide the cash flow to take care of our loved ones. The same as medical. And so that's why when people say, I'm going to go out on my own and do all these things, they're kind of doing what they love, which is good. But they've really got to think about how many liabilities do they have. It's not just your rent, it's your family. And so for me and for Kim, we have family members, but they're liabilities. So that's why we stay over here. Hopefully nothing will go wrong. But if one of my sisters got ill and she needs $100,000 a month, at least I can provide it. So once again, the 6 words you have to know and be masters of: income, expense, asset, liability, cash flow. You can control cash flow. That's financial intelligence, financial IQ, and financial literacy. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.